Yeah. 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 Well, what else have you been thinking about? Wow, I got a whole bunch of drawings on my book.
Little doodle action, huh?
Yeah.
Well, you know me, I'm always thinking about the government. Um, the other kind of thing that I've been stewing on lately is like the whole number one, like the economic cycle in general, because I always, being in real estate, you always get to hear, people's opinions on what they think the market's going to do. And at the end of the day, nobody knows the 100% truth or what's really going to happen. And it's kind of like the stock market. Oh, it's going to the moon tomorrow. Everybody, there's always,
Mhm.
everybody's got all this speculation going on and stuff like that. And it's like, so most of the experts just kind of predict that on average, we're going to have roughly 4% growth in home values, and this is brought up to mind because so many people are always like, we've heard them say, well, I'm just going to wait for the market to crash before I buy or something, along those lines. And it brought to me the other day, Mel and I were kind of talking about making decisions based on fear or based on like facts and inputs and data that you actually have in front of you. So long story short, roundabout way of saying what I was stewing on is taxes versus tariffs. And the reason it hit me so personally the other day or whatever, people have been talking that Trump's kicking around the idea of trying to use tariffs to get rid of income taxes. I don't know how much validity there is to that, or if that's an actual like economic plan they have in place or not. But it just got me thinking.
Can I pause you for a second?
Mm-hmm.
Will you explain the difference between tariffs and taxes?
So taxes, yeah, income tax. Like we make $1, the government takes half of it, right? That's a tax. So a tariff is more of a tax on other nations when they import goods to our country. So you can, the big argument against them is that they have the propensity to increase the cost of goods. So if you're going to import a bunch of steel from China because they make it 10 times cheaper than we do or whatever, the strategy would be, okay, well, then we're going to tariff that. So that's a tax on China, in which they're going to pass along into the cost of the steel, right? That's a known fact. So the cost of that good could go up. But I was analyzing it and I'm like, man, if you would have given me my tax dollars back for the last 5 years, the economic impact that just my family alone could have had on our community and our state, you know what I mean? Like it would be, in my opinion, exponentially greater than what the government does with my income tax dollars. You know what I'm saying? So I look at like, if the cost of goods goes up, but I get to keep everything that I generate and create in our own family, I don't know what the actual economic impact would be, but in my head, it's got to be way better than what we're getting when we ship all of our money up to the government. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's just the amount of money that we've paid in taxes. And I picture, had that not gone up to the federal government, had that stayed in our family and been spread out amongst our local community, like the tangible impact that would have had in people I know's lives, I can't imagine a better situation for our country than, okay, yes, maybe goods cost more, but every person who's working their butt off gets to keep what they make and spend it in their own, however they spend their money. I think that the return on investment for that would be far greater.
And this leads me into the wrestling match we've talked about 100 times probably in the last 2 years of supporting local.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? I think that it does make it more tangible, um, because you have that little bit more. But here's the other side I see is, will people be willing to change and support local? Because even though you have that much more money that you can support local, it's much easier to spend $5 less on Amazon.
Correct. there will always be that individual argument for each household of like, I'm going to shop local and pay a little bit more versus I'm going to go on Amazon or Walmart and get it for cheaper. Like that, it doesn't necessarily take care of that side of
No,
the equation. But I still strongly believe if you put more money into the pockets of American citizens, that money is more effective than if you put it into the pocket of the government. You know what I'm saying?
which is basically the trickle up versus trickle down effect, correct?
Correct. And the government has proven itself to be a black hole where money goes to give you no return, right?
Right.
It goes to get wasted.
When I was taught about, and correct me if I'm way off here, but this is what I was taught, is that the trickle down effect was primarily a right wing way of thinking, the trickle down, and it looks more like give more freedoms to large companies, and then the trickle up event or idea is put money directly into the pockets. So like give money to the poor from the government, which seems to be a negative, and then have it work up.
Okay, so I think you're kind of right and kind of wrong there. So yeah, trickle down was often called Reaganomics. The idea was you give tax cuts to corporations and they pass that along to their employees, and the employees doing better at life, making more money and paying less in taxes has a net positive effect on the economy because they go out and spend more money from each household, right? So the average worker does better. They buy more consumer goods. The economy does better, right? That's the idea behind it.
Right.
The inverse one that you're talking about there, I've never really actually heard it articulated or anything like that, but it sounds to me like you're talking about, okay, government funds being handed out to people. That can still have the same effect, but the problem, but the problem in my mind is that the second the government is involved, dollars start losing efficiency. They start losing their ability to impact our lives, right? Because there's so much corruption and, all that kind of stuff in the government. Every 9 out of every $10 just goes into somebody's pocket, it seems like these days. So, you know what I mean?
I also think, though, that it creates dependency upon the government. And this is where I believe our nation is kind of at the moment, is we are dependent, which is a very powerful tool for a government official, because now you can say, I'm going to give you a little bit more money when they say they're going to give you this much. They put half in your pocket and then you give it to them. And they're like, yeah, I'm going to vote for someone that's going to give me more money. And then it just makes you weaker because you're not working for anything. You're just getting money.
It's even much darker than that. And we've seen that play out in the last 5 years. And we've talked about this before. It's like, this goes back to, okay, when I'm a young man and I just take all the data in for the world and it screams at me alarm bells, like, you have to be successful. This is part of the reason why. Yeah. And that's because you need to have sovereignty in your ability to make decisions for you and your family. And if you're dependent on somebody for a paycheck, you lose a lot of that sovereignty, right? Like, take the vaccine, for example. You know how many people probably got the vaccine just because it was tied to their job and keeping their paychecks coming in? You know what I mean? Like that's a tough spot to be in. And I feel terrible for everybody who was placed into that situation and had to make that choice, not just based off of this is what I think is wrong or right, but based off like, okay, do I get to feed my family tomorrow? Like that's not a fair pressure in my mind for the government to have on its citizens.
Yeah. And I don't know what else to say. But because this is the situation because I was in that situation and
right.
But the thing is that I was young and I don't even know the right word.
It's not like you're trying to support a family, even, you know?
Yeah, I was trying to make it out. I was like receptive, like, and I was vulnerable. You know, I wasn't wise. I couldn't think bigger picture. I was 18 years old.
Right.
Like that stuff's not crossing my mind right now. I'm playing JUCO basketball, trying to make it out. Yeah. Like, that's the only thing I care about. And then you're trying to tell me that if I don't get this shot, I'm going to miss the whole season.
Yeah.
Or if I get sick and I don't get the shot, I'm out for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, I waited till literally the last day because I was super against it. I waited till the day before the first practice, and I was like, okay, fine. The day before first practice, I got shot. And then, if you want, this makes me so angry. 3 months later, our season just kept getting pushed back because of the whole thing going on. But they came out and they said, doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
So you put all this pressure into me, and then you just change your mind. That doesn't matter. Now you only sit out the 7 days like everybody else, even though you don't have a shot.
That's typically how the government overreaches to begin with, though. It's like they're operating in an area where they don't have the legal authority to do it, so they just do it anyways, or like make you think they're going to do it, or just put the pressure on, and then eventually the legal system catches up and works around. It's like, oh, you can't do that. That's not constitutional. Oh, you can't. You know, like they kind of just like force you first and then ask questions later is their strategy most times.
Yeah, and that was kind of the point I was trying to make of like, I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know this, that they couldn't do that. So
right.
I'm just like, all right, guess that's the way it is. Like, how are you doing this? I don't know, but I'm just going to follow suit.
Yeah. And think about having like the pressure of having kids and like having to buy groceries every month. You know what I mean? Like that's just,
yeah. I
think that's an unfair burden or pressure to be put on our citizens.
Yeah, and plus like nobody knew anything about it, like how it could affect the human body. And now I'm just like I pray to God that it's not going to cause any harm to me now, or 20 years from now.
Right.
That it doesn't cause me to have MS. That then gets passed down. Like did that my 18-year-old decision? Did that cost my kid something?
Right.
That's the situation I'm in now, where I'm like, God, please get this stuff out of my body, or don't let the trajectory of me making a silly decision change that.
Well, good thing you live under the household of a generous host, huh?
Yeah.
For real though.
Yeah.
God's all knowing. He's very forgiving for us, and his redemption knows no limits.
And if you want to talk about Bible here, I because I'm reading the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's my goal for 2025 is to read the Old Testament, and it's reading it. I try to put myself in those shoes because it's so harsh. Like, but that was before Jesus, and it's like, how do I take this and apply it to a post-Jesus era?
Right.
And that's what I've been wrestling with, and it's like, I just put myself in the shoes of there's no Jesus and nobody's died. You have to be, because it seems like God was much harsher than what I believe he is right now.
Right.
Like before Jesus. I don't know what input you have for that, but that's my wrestling match.
Well, it's a is a good distinction to bring up, because the Old Testament is the story of God in general, is God trying to be close to us. His creation that he's created in his image. What his heart wants is to be close with us, right? Mm-hmm. And we find ways to screw that up 24/7. That's human history, right? And the first book of the Bible, Genesis, is really good about outlining that pattern for us. Well, by the time Moses even comes back down from the mountain of getting the 10 Commandments, we've already built a golden calf and we're worshiping it. You know what I mean? Like, this dude hasn't even made it back from talking to God yet, and we've already screwed it up. Like, this is how, for some reason, it's ingrained into us to do that. And the only ways prior to Jesus to atone for sin was through like sacrifice and all these
sacrifices,
ritual law things that they had going on back then. And then you have the greatest gift in human history, which is God sending his own son to die for us and to take atonement for all the sin, past, present, future, like wipe the slate clean and give us access to this unfettered forgiveness. It's kind of hard to justify the difference between those two worlds. You know what I mean?
It's hard to even imagine.
Correct.
I don't know.
Put yourself in those shoes. It's tough.
Yeah. And like I think about, I mean, I don't want to quote this the wrong way, so I'm going to look it up. It was Leviticus 24, verse 23. It says, "Then Moses spoke to the children of Israel, and they took outside the camp him who had cursed and stoned him with stones. So the children of Israel did as the Lord commanded." Like, to the point where we are stoning people because of cursing is, like, it's hard to imagine of a world that's what happened. Like, how much accountability you have to have for yourself.
Right.
And it's like, I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't have made it back then. There's no way.
Right. And there's an aspect of it too that it's like, I mean, there's still, I don't think it's as prevalent, or maybe we just have a hard time because we don't experience it as often. But I mean, there's still cultures and societies today who will kill you for doing the wrong thing, something that's not societally acceptable. I mean, even us today in America, it's like, okay, we'll give you the death penalty for certain crimes, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not stoning in the public square like it used to be, but it's, it's capital punishment nonetheless.
Yeah. That also flipped my idea of like, well, if they're stoning for cursing, is my idea of cursing too lenient? Right? Like, in my mind, it's not as bad as some of the other ones, but should it be?
I don't have a solid answer for you on that one, because it's something I struggle with all the time. Like, just the level of like, should I even watch this movie because it doesn't have a spiritually oriented message behind it or whatever? It's like, should I even just consume this TV show because it's not moving my spiritual relationship in the right direction? It's more of just that, like, I struggle with that stuff too. It's like, this is just for my own personal enjoyment, to enjoy watching the show. It's not, making me a better
it's not that deep, right?
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. But I mean, also, you're the guy that would know, but I wouldn't research anything like that if I'm watching a movie. But if you knew it wasn't spiritually rooted, then you can kind of look at it from a different lens of like, I'm keeping an open mind. I'm just seeing the other side of things, right? I'm learning from what they're doing and what the opposite side is saying. So, I mean, there's like that learning, open-minded communication where we talked about Joe a couple episodes ago. So, I don't know. It's
for sure
positive light in every message, right? I don't know.
For sure. And it's like we've talked about before. I can take any show and I can choose to view it through whatever lens I want to. Like, I can look at the characters and extrapolate lessons from their life that are beneficial to me. You know what I mean? Like, and that's how that's storytelling across human history. You tell the story of the hero defeating the bad guy or whatever. Like, it's the same thing as storytelling today. Like, you can pull out virtues and character traits and different things from these stories that you can like imagine you apply to your own life, or you can put yourself in those shoes. It's just like a really good thought experiment for you to play around with. Like, well, if I was in that situation, what would I do? Or you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
Anything can be used to learn and grow.
Yeah, and I think those thought experiments are good. I mean, I really do.
Me too.
And they're kind of fun. It forces you to change and look differently. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
How do I pause this?
I think that's a thing. Like, it's like, until you've lived that way, how are you going to understand what it's like to live in the Old Testament when you don't have access to God's forgiveness like that? When you have to go slaughter one of your lambs or cows or whatever to atone for sin. I don't know that we'll ever really be able to comprehend what it's like to live under that.
Yeah. It's just interesting. I mean,
probably good to think about, though.
God's this all-powerful being that knows all. Right? So, do you believe that he is still learning and growing from us as well?
Wow, that's a good.
That's where I don't know where this came from, but like, yes, he is all powerful, but like, and he knows the human race and what they're gonna do, but like his ideas of where human race is gonna go, it seems like reading through the Old Testament, it seems like he's changing as well.
He did, yeah. That's what led to Jesus coming.
Like he's kind of like this super powerful being, whatever he is, or whatever he looks like. I believe he's light is what I believe he is. And then he's like, okay, the human race chose the wrong way to go. Sin, it's corrupted, everyone's evil, right? I'm just gonna flood the whole land and try again. Right? Yep. And then it's like, then he's like, okay, I'm never gonna do that again. So it's like, okay, he had to have learned that, like, he's like, okay, that didn't seem right. So I'm not going to do that again. So I don't know. It seems to me that like he is also changing and growing as well, even though he is all powerful and all knowing. Like, I think he's just on a much larger scale than us. He can see everything happening in the actual direction and can look farther, what we can't do.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, because, and I'm trying to remember exactly what specific Bible story it was. It was a matter of kind of like the flood, where the flood was like, everything's already way too bad. Like, I'm just going to destroy everything and start over. Mm-hmm. There's other instances in the Bible where he's looking into the future and saying, like, this is going to result in that. I think it was maybe the Tower of Babel, where he confused everybody's languages, and they were trying to build the tower to heaven to prove that they were just as powerful as God or whatever. Mm-hmm. So he confused everybody's languages and scattered them across the world. I think it was that story where the narrator is kind of going into the specific mechanics of it, where it's like, okay, well, this was to keep things from getting so far down the road where he wanted to just destroy the world again. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I even think about it to like the departing of the Red Sea with Moses.
Fleeing Israel or fleeing Egypt.
Right. Like he crashes the wave onto
Pharaoh and
his men, or well, I can't remember the names of them, but like, I mean, that's kind of like I had to sacrifice these evil lives so that I could start over with Israel. It's interesting, and I don't know enough to speak about these things. I just try to look for trends of what's happening here.
Well, that's a good, just for life in general, that's a good habit to have. Look for patterns and trends. That's a very wise position to take on stuff. But I agree with you. We talked about earlier, like confidence has never been my shortage. But when it comes to the scriptures and the Bible and stuff like that, that's one of them where I'm hesitant to speak outside of my, realm of confident knowledge, because I respect the Lord so much and what he's done for me and my family and our life and that kind of stuff. So I don't want to talk out of turn, but I do believe that there's a lot of clear things, like God is truth and he is omnipotent or all knowing. So that to me kind of indicates that he's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So I would say I'm inclined to believe like he's not changing. Maybe his actions are changing in response to us, but I think they're probably coming from a God whose objective is to just be close to his creation. Does that make sense? More as like, it's not
so his his values will never waver. Yes,
correct.
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes, I would agree.
I think I'm more inclined to believe.
Right, and that's where I would never think that he should change his values. What he believes in, I agree with 100%. But like the direction of like the human race, like I guess like you said, action, where the way he's going to take his people forward. I think that is what's kind of changing.
Yeah, his actions have evolved over time. Like
and I just want to make a distinction. Like, this is my opinion, and I'm sure it'll change in 5 years when I've read the Bible a time or two. But right now, like, I know this is like super corny, like disclaimer, but like, yes, this is my opinion. I'm just an idea. If you can choose to believe that or not, that's up to you.
We should put that disclaimer on everyone. Just like, hey, just so you know, we're just a bunch of idiots here trying to figure our way through life. We're just making, I'm no self-appointed.
Yeah, that's exactly. I don't mind looking like an idiot when I'm talking about society or culture or anything, but when it comes to the Bible, man, I struggle. It's like I am not a priest. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a minister. I don't have a super in-depth knowledge of the Bible. I mean, it's grown a lot the last few years. I'm an immature Christian still. I'm still learning and growing, but I'm not one. Yeah. I don't believe I'm able to preach yet, and that's what I stopped early. I mean, that's what we were talking about beginning of, like, I don't want to read the Bible and then to discuss it because I don't think I'm there yet, can't speak for you, but I'm not ready to speak.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm the only thing that I think is good is that it's coming from a position of reverence and respect. It's like we're just trying to. It's like if you're gonna fold the flag at a veteran's funeral or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't know what you're doing, you don't want to do it wrong and do something disrespectful, right? So
that's a very good analogy.
Yeah, it's something that you respect and you revere, and you want to make sure it's being treated in the utmost way that it needs to be treated. You know what I mean? I think that's a good thing to err on the side of caution for.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that disclaimer was out there, but I mean, I'm still going to talk about the God. Like I know what's going on. 100%.
Yeah. Right.
I'm still going to form my own opinions. So, I mean, that's not going to change. So,
I'll give you my opinions on everything, but about, stock tips, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know nothing about that.
Yeah, I haven't even been watching the stock market, so I'm not even in tune with what's going on. Once January hit and it was getting close to inauguration, I was like, I'm not putting any more money into this thing until it figures itself out, because it's going like up and down and all over the place. So I'm like, I'm not even gonna mess with it anymore.
It cracks me up, man, how many people I talk to who just have all these like. Man, so many people, like, and I don't know. I'm like, man, am I missing something? Am I not paying so much attention. Like almost everybody I talk to these days, it seems like they've got a Robinhood account and they're doing all this little trading and stuff like that. And it just like, I mean, I feel like I'm a pretty intellectual guy. Most of the stuff just flings right over my head when they're spitting it at me. It's like, okay, I guess I'll just keep buying dirt.
I think that's partially it. Is it's so personal nowadays, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't have to have this in-depth account, and people are realizing like you don't need to have all this knowledge. Like the ultimate trend of the market is it's going up, so you're still either way. So
very true.
I mean, you might lose $1,000 one day, and then 10 years from now you're up $2,000. So it's like it's all gonna end up, and so that's why I'm like I don't.
And I hear all different kinds of strategies, and I find them fascinating. And I usually just try to take those strategies and apply them to other areas of my life. Like like people are like, okay, no, you got to watch the charts and the trends, right? Like, so you could take any company on here, any coin on here, anything like that. You just watch the charts and the trends and you look for patterns and you try to take advantage of those patterns, right? And then there's other people who are like, no, you look at the individual companies and you're like, okay, you're looking for news or anything like, oh, they're getting ready to launch this new division, which is going to make their stock price go up. So it's like, people who are looking for individually leverageable events in a company that is going. It's so fascinating to me.
And I'm the guy that's right in the middle, and I do not take it stock advice from me. I just mess around.
What a disclaimer: this is not a financial advice podcast. So.
Yeah, no. If you want to do that, go watch somebody else, right? But I'm like, okay, what's going on in the world that could affect this person? Also, where is their price compared to where it's been in the last 5 years?
Yeah.
Like like if I throw something in the stock market, it's probably going to be in there for at least 5 years. If not, if I lose a bunch, it'll eventually come up in 5 years, right? So I'm not too worried about it. If I turn a quick dollar into 2 months, if I guess it right, well, then I made a couple $100 that month. And if it goes up in 5 years, whatever, it don't matter to me. But I also look at one thing I've been looking at now is insider trading. So are they investing in themselves? Because in my mind, if they're investing in themselves, they got something big coming.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. I just got to jumble all this together.
Oh, that's a good. Okay. When you first said insider trading, my first thought is Nancy Pelosi. And I'm going to say,
yeah. Well, hey, I just heard this on a podcast the other day, Bob, that you can actually watch her stocks, what she buys. And if you follow, I mean, why am I not doing this? I don't know. But it's like all of her stuff's gone up like hundreds of %.
Weird.
Isn't that wackadoo? It's like, well, I mean, but it's public information now, so why didn't everybody do it?
Yeah, right.
And then I don't know. It's just funny. It's all public knowledge now. It's awesome.
Yeah, I'll just never forget her saying, man, what did she say? It's a free market. We should all be able to participate. Something like that. I'm just like, oh, geez. Yeah.
But I'm not even opening that can of worms, Bob. I got to get wrapped up here and into this.
Save that one.
I mean, that's we'll say because I was about to open up a can of worms, but yeah, I got to get going here anyways too. So
okay, sounds
well.
good.
I think that was pretty good. I kind of like that layout. So yeah,
sounds good to me.
Yep. All righty. Well, we'll wrap this one up.
Okay, sounds good. Love you, bud. Have a good week.
Yep. You too.
Bye.